You are about to cross into a world where fear is real. Real stories, unexplained phenomena, where the supernatural lurks in the shadows. From the Portal of Dread. Story 1, Calls Always at Midnight.
Hello, Eerie visitors. Welcome to the Portal of Dread. Prepare to cross the threshold between the tangible and the inexplicable. Dim the lights, don your headphones, and settle in. Because tonight, together, we shall unfold a new chapter in terror. Are you prepared for the unknown? Then hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment stating, "I'm not scared." Now, let's begin. It was always at midnight. Initially, I dismissed it as pure coincidence. A random misdial, perhaps an insomniac mistakenly ringing my number 7 consecutive times while the world slept. But no, it was invariably at the stroke of midnight, not a minute before, not a second after. The first occurrence was on a Tuesday. I was on the sofa fighting off sleep when my phone vibrated. 1, 2, 7 missed calls. The number? None. Literally. No digits, no origin. Just the word, unknown. I unlocked my phone, bewildered. I tried to return the call. Network error. I ran the number through a tracking app. Nothing. As if the number simply didn't exist. The following night, at the identical hour, it happened again. 7 missed calls. Always 7. And from the same faceless number. A phantom traversing invisible lines. On the third night, something chilled me to the bone. The ringtone echoed differently, not just from my phone, but throughout the entire room, as if the call were originating from inside my own home. I slowly rose. I surveyed my surroundings, lights extinguished, windows locked. Yet even amidst the silence, that viscous sensation lingered. Someone, or something, was there. Close, invisible. I attempted to ignore it, to power down the device, to sleep earlier. But even without the phone nearby, something would awaken me, precisely at EO, always accompanied by that distinct impression of a whisper grazing the nape of my neck. On the 6th night, I heard footsteps. Slow, in the corridor. There was no one living with me. No upstairs neighbors, no pets, just me, and the number that didn't exist. Now it is the 7th night. My phone is silent for the first time, but it brings no relief. Rather, it is the menacing void of something far worse, like the stillness preceding a scream. Suddenly, 3 distinct knocks reverberate through the apartment from the front door. Not 4, not 5. 3, calculated to assert presence without soliciting permission. I take a step towards the door, my heart hammering. I peer through the peephole. Nothing. The street lies deserted. The street lamp on the sidewalk flickers almost mockingly, illuminating the silhouette of a girl, incredibly thin, utterly motionless. She doesn't stir. She just watches me. With bated breath, I open the door. For an instant, I regret having opened it. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old. Dressed in old, soiled clothes, she looked like she'd emerged from a derelict thrift store. Clutched in her left hand was something. An old, scratched cell phone, identical to mine. Wordlessly, she extends her arm and presents me with the device. "You forgot this," she whispers almost inaudibly. "What?" In the blink of an eye, she is no longer there. I stand transfixed, 2 identical phones in my hands, both off, battery dead, defying all logic, as if they mirrored one another. Yet neither should have existed. My hands tremble as I power on my phone. The screen flickers. a log of the past 6 nights, all missed calls consistently at midnight 7 times. I access an obscure tracking website. I enter all the details. Unidentified number, off-grid, no origin located, non-existent. How could this be? I comb through forums searching for similar accounts. Most appear to be cheap fiction. But one catches my eye. A man detailed 7 identical calls, invariably at midnight. On the 7th day, he vanished. Only his cell phone remained, ringing autonomously in an empty house. I switch everything off. I attempt to sleep. I cannot manage it. At 11:59 p.m., sweat beads on my skin. 11:59:50. 11:59:55. The screen of the old phone illuminates autonomously, devoid of battery, unconnected. Midnight. First ring. I attempt to decline. Second ring. Third. Fourth. Fifth. On the 7th, the living room light sputters. When it normalizes, the wall mirror is obscured, but I haven't showered. I lean in closer. There it is. A handprint on the inside of the mirror. A shiver runs down my spine. I attempt to wipe it away. The mark persists, imprinted there, unyielding, as if something was trying to escape or draw me within. Clutching the phone, I realize both now share the identical interface, the same files, as if they had fused, or one had somehow infected the other. In the gallery, a new photograph, myself, asleep, in my bed, shot from above, as if something were lurking from the ceiling. I had never taken that photograph. The window groans. I rush to it. Nothing. But outside, a fresh handprint marred the glass. The old phone begins to vibrate anew. Midnight. 7 missed calls. This time, a novel sound permeates the house. 3 knocks on the door. Once more. My blood runs cold. I rush to the peephole. The same girl, same dress, same vacant gaze. But now her fingers are smeared with blood, and the phone she clutched is ringing. I open the door, my hand trembling. She extends the device towards me. With a cracked screen and a notification, 1 call answered. But I hadn't answered it. Before I could utter a word, she whispers, "He needs to speak with you." Who? Who is he? You. From the other side. And she turns, vanishing into the darkness as if smoke dissolving into the wind. I lock all the doors. The new phone rings again. Ring, 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 until the 7th. I take a deep breath. This time, I answer. Silence. Then a faint, desperate breath. Then, my own voice. "Help me. Get me out of here. I don't know where I am. I am you." The call drops. And with it, I realize the reality around me begins to fracture. What I see no longer conforms to known rules. I stand frozen, the phone weighing tons in my hands. That voice, it was mine, identical, but something about it seemed corrupted. I try to call back, nothing. I open the gallery. More photos have appeared, all recent, all impossible. One shows my corridor, empty. The other, my bedroom door ajar. In the last, my sleeping face, behind me. The silhouette of someone standing, but there was no one there. I rush to the bedroom. I switch on all the lights. Empty. I look under the bed. In the closet, in the mirror. Nothing. But looking at the phone, a new app appears. Repetition. I never installed this. I tap it. The screen goes black. A video begins. My living room, my sofa. Me sitting there now. Same clothes. In the video, I don't move. I remain still. Until 3 knocks sound at the door. In the video, I rise slowly, exactly as before. I go to the door. I look through the peephole. I open it. I receive the phone from the girl. Every gesture, every breath, a recorded déjà vu. The video doesn't stop. Now it shows something that hasn't happened yet. Me going to the bathroom, looking into the mirror, and in the reflection, I smile, but it's not my smile. I close the app in a panic, but the image remains fixed in the smiling reflection. I look at the real mirror, and there it is, the same frozen smile staring back at me. But I am not smiling. I stumble, run to the corridor. The phone vibrates. A new voice message. I press play. My voice, distorted. The exchange has begun. You are no longer the first. In the background, I can hear my own breathing, but coming from behind me, I turn instantly. Nothing, just the dark corridor, but the certainty grows. Something is imitating me, or worse, replacing me. I wake up, but I don't remember having fallen asleep. The house is the same, or almost. The corridor flickers. The clock reads 0. The phone I destroyed the night before has reappeared, intact on the table. 7 missed calls. Unknown number. The photos were back. All of them. And more. Now there are videos of me in places I've never been. An underground tunnel. A basement. Walls scratched red. A windowless room filled with symbols on the ceiling. In one of the videos I scream, "Get me out of here! It's inside me!" I hang up. I run to the bathroom. I need to wash my face. I lean against the mirror. The reflection doesn't track my movements. While I blink, it doesn't. While I gasp, it smiles. And I see the reflection raise its hand before I do. "You took your time answering," my voice says, emanating from the mirror's mouth. I race through the rooms. I tried to leave. Everything was locked. The TV turns on by itself. Images from my childhood, my grandmother's funeral, graduation, forgotten memories. Suddenly, a live feed. Me trying to escape myself. Caption: Episode 7. The cycle ends where it begins. The phone rings again. It's a landline, but there's no phone line in the house. Ring, ring, ring. I answer. Silence. A distorted voice made up of several familiar voices. Wake, sleep, forget, repeat. Each time, a little less of you remains. "Who are you?" I scream. "I am what remains," when someone answers. The call drops. The light goes out. When it returns, everything has reset. First night. Notification. 7 missed calls. Night 1. I look at the calendar. It says the 6th. But my mind remembers the 13th. Remembers the girl. The photos. The fire. Everything has begun anew. The cycle is closed. Unbreakable. Only now. I feel someone peering at me from the mirror, even when I'm not looking. My phone slips from my hand, vibrating on the floor like an unhinged heart. Each vibration makes the house pulse. I pick up the device. In the gallery, all the images have new dates and times. From the future, I look at the first, June 12th, 03:12 a.m. My living room in flames. I'm sitting, inert. The second, June 13th, 0 wow, my street. An overturned ambulance, a body covered by a sheet. Beside it, my shattered phone. The third, undated, just the bedroom mirror, but the reflection isn't human. I open the repetition app. New files. One of them, Final 7 MP4. I should stop, but I can't. The footage shakes, showing someone running through the house. The camera pans through the living room, kitchen, mirror, all the way to the bathroom. Me in the video whispering, "I know I'm not myself anymore, but I can't leave. It's in my place now." The camera reveals my face, gaunt, pale, sunken eyes. The screen darkens, red letters emerge. 2 nights left. I shut off the device. I smash it against the wall. Chips crack. The battery leaps out. Silence. Yet no sooner do I shatter the phone than another begins to ring. EO0, 0, unknown number. The seventh time, a bitter tang of fear coats my tongue. I answer. This time the voice isn't solely mine, but interwoven with something grave, arid, devoid of emotion. Now, you've seen what's coming. The only choice was not to answer. What do you want from me? It's not what I want. It's what has already been wrought. The call collapses, and the disquiet only just begins. I've lost count of how many times everything has reset. With each passing dawn, 7 missed calls. The same girl at the door, the same phone. The agonizing certainty. Something copies me, reiterates my existence, and with each cycle I am less and less myself. I've attempted everything, isolating myself, burying the device, obliterating it. It always returns, in the same place, at the same time. The distortion merely escalates. Each reflection in the mirror reveals a stranger. On the 7th repetition, I discern a difference in the last call. The voice is mine, but emanating from another time, another reality. There exist versions of me trapped in different strata of this very nightmare, and I am merely one more. That night, I relinquish the fight to escape. I sit down, confronting the ringing phone. Ring 1, ring 2, ring 3, ring 4, ring 5, ring 6, ring 7, I answer. The line goes silent, then heavy breathing. Hello, I whisper. The voice responds icily. The exchange is complete. What exchange? You answered. Now, I am the one who lives. You are merely the observer. I attempt to speak. No sound escapes. My limbs refuse to obey. I rise, but I am not the one controlling the movement. I walk to the mirror. My expression is vacant, eyes hollow. I am no longer myself. Thank you for answering, he says. Now you may rest. In the depths. The reflection darkens until it vanishes entirely. But I still perceive the world, as if watching from within a screen. Trapped. A week later, a new advertisement circulates on used item websites. Vintage cell phone, rare model. Operates exclusively at midnight. Caution, do not answer. Not even out of idle curiosity. Photo of the device, identical to mine. Caption, should you hear your own voice, disconnect immediately, otherwise the next iteration of yourself will no longer be you. The phone is sold the same day. Buyer, unknown. Location, your city. Should your phone ring 7 times after midnight, do not disregard it. Recount your story before it is too late.
Story 2. Never Look, Reflections Forbidden.
My name is Melina, and the bar where I work, deep in rural Minas Gerais, is one of those places time forgot. A small, decaying sanctuary nestled by the roadside, yet with a back entrance that opens onto the town like a poorly healed wound. There's nothing special about it. Just a dark wooden counter, perpetually a bit sticky no matter how much I wipe it down, and a lingering scent that blends stale beer, cheap disinfectant, and the loneliness of hundreds of identical nights. The regulars are always the same. Weary faces who know each other by first name, truck drivers taking a grim respite from their long hauls, and occasionally a lost tourist who wandered in seeking something stronger than a mere drink. I appreciate the routine, the predictability. During the week, silence outweighs the clientele, which is why the management allows me to work alone. No one to wash glasses, no one watching my back. It's easier, they say. Slower. But emptiness carries its own weight, and solitude in a place like this can become a perilous companion. My eyes have learned to scan the room, to read postures, to decipher silences. I know the talkers, the flirts, those who drink in quiet resignation, and those who simply wish the world would vanish. Vigilance becomes a sixth sense. That's why I noticed him the instant the door swung open, ushering in a gust of cold pre-dawn air and a presence that simply did not belong. It was past 1 in the morning on a Tuesday. He appeared to be in his late 40s, but there was something about him that defied his age and, more notably, the setting. Impeccably groomed, precisely cut hair, a black turtleneck sweater beneath an equally dark overcoat. He was not the kind of man who gets lost and stumbles in here. He entered as if the bar were merely a piece on his personal chessboard. What do you think the presence of a man so incongruous with the environment signifies? Share your theories and tell me if you've ever felt someone was utterly out of place. He did not glance at the few patrons scattered among the dim tables. His eyes swept the room with a calculated calm, a swift and efficient assessment, before his expensive shoes echoed softly on the worn wooden floor. He walked directly to the counter and took a seat. I recall observing his posture, strangely erect, almost military, a stark contrast to the slumping shoulders of the other patrons. There was an aura of sophistication about him, an energy that whispered of money. Real money, not the kind that shouts for attention, but the kind that moves the world from the shadows, unseen and absolute. When I approached, he was unwavering. His eyes scanned the bottles behind me, and he requested an expensive top-shelf drink with the unassuming air of someone accustomed to the finest. As I poured the amber liquid into the crystal glass, his voice cut through the quiet. "Do you enjoy working here?" he inquired, a smile gracing his lips. The question was standard, almost mundane, the sort of small talk I heard every night. So I responded with the truth, or the version of it I peddled to customers. I said yes, returned his smile, and made some inane quip about the life of a bartender. I wish I could say I felt a chill, that an alarm bell rang in my head, but the energy he exuded was not of that nature. He seemed genuinely friendly, almost paternal, like that single dad at his son's baseball game, high-fiving the entire team. He chatted with me for a while, and I didn't mind. The bar was quiet, and his company was, in a way, intriguing. But then, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "Have you ever considered doing something bigger?" he asked, his smile unwavering, but his eyes seemed to probe for something within me. The question hung in the air, odd and out of place, shattering the normalcy of our interaction. Did he seem like a mentor or a predator? What would you do if a stranger suddenly began to question your life choices out of the blue? Resist until the end if you can. His question, doing something bigger, caught me off guard. It wasn't a come on. It wasn't a critique. It was something else, a probing. Even so, I maintained my composure, reverting to my standard bartender's smile, a mask I wore as naturally as my apron. "I'm content for now," I replied, a polite falsehood designed to curtail a subject I had no desire to explore. He nodded slowly, raising the glass to his lips, and for an instant, a shadow of disappointment flickered in his gaze. It was as if my response, my perceived lack of ambition, had frustrated him for some reason I couldn't fathom. A long silence settled between us, heavy and disquieting. The drone of the beverage cooler seemed louder than ever. Then, shattering the quiet, he abruptly asked, "What time do you get off?" The question came out of nowhere, blunt and unvarnished. All the warmth and cordiality I thought I'd sensed from him dissipated into thin air. Disappointment washed over me. So that was it. Another hollow, thinly veiled attempt to get my number to encroach upon my space. All that conversation, that aura of sophistication, was merely a prelude to the same worn-out routine. I smiled, but this time it was a different smile, a touch colder, more detached. I gave him a non-committal reply, something about not having a set schedule, attempting to politely deter him without appearing hostile. Before he could press the issue, I turned and began wiping down the counter with renewed vigor, an unequivocal gesture that the conversation was concluded. But he didn't press the matter. He merely smiled, an enigmatic smile, as if he already knew the answer. Then, he drained his drink in one swallow, pulled a pristine $100 bill from his pocket, and laid it smoothly onto the wooden surface. The gesture was so casual, so utterly nonchalant, as if the money were utterly inconsequential. Without another word, he stood and exited, vanishing into the night's shadows. Was the 100 real note a payment, a gift, or a warning? Comment on what you believe this gesture signified. I stood there, staring at the 100 real note on the counter. It was real, crisp. The entire encounter felt surreal. It wasn't frightening in the classic sense, but his behavior was so incongruous, so far outside my experiential radar, that it left me intrigued and with an unsettling feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was like trying to fit a puzzle piece into the wrong slot. It simply didn't compute. Regardless, I presumed it was just one of those bizarre episodes that the night occasionally yields. A wealthy, bored man seeking a fleeting diversion. I picked up the money, pocketed it, and resumed my life, convinced I would never see him again. But I was wrong. Roughly a week later, the bar door swung open again, and there he was. Only this time he wasn't alone. A woman accompanied him, and it was she who instantly commanded my full attention. She appeared to be in her early to mid-30s, but dressed in a manner that belied her apparent age. Trendy, yet contrived clothes, as if someone striving too hard to blend in with a younger crowd. There was something calculated about her every move. I watched her keenly as the two approached the counter. Her smile was unnervingly easy, too broad. The way she leaned against the wood, as if we were already old friends, felt rehearsed. As I set the napkins before them, her first words weren't a greeting or a drink order. It was a compliment. With an exuberantly cheerful smile, she declared, "You're so beautiful." Her fingers brushed my arm as she spoke, lingering there for a second longer than was customary. The touch was light, yet it seemed to leave an icy trail on my skin. I chuckled, thanked her, but an internal alarm began to blare. There was something fundamentally amiss with that woman, and the man, the customer from the previous week, remained silent, merely observing. His usual loquaciousness had vanished, replaced by a vigilant stillness that was, in some ways, even more unsettling. Which was more unnerving, the woman's forced conviviality or the man's sudden reticence? Describe a situation where someone's kindness made you suspicious. They ordered their drinks, and I served them, feeling her eyes on me with every movement. Then, the questions began to cascade, a deluge of curiosity that seemed anything but casual. How long have you worked here? How old are you? And a string of other small-talk questions that didn't seem aimed at forging a connection, but rather at data collection. I responded with terse, polite phrases, keeping my guard up. I had the distinct impression that it wasn't a conversation, it was an assessment. She was scrutinizing me, analyzing my reactions, weighing my words. At one point, she glanced at the man beside her, and for an instant, it seemed they were communicating without uttering a single word. A glance, a silent exchange of information that completely excluded me and made me feel like an insect under a microscope. Then she turned back to me, and her smile never wavered, which was starting to give me genuine chills. She told me she managed an exclusive events club. She leaned in slightly as she spoke, lowering her voice as if imparting a confidence, as though to prevent the few other patrons from overhearing. She claimed she was always seeking young, fun people for private parties and assured me I would make a fortune. 10,000 for a weekend, she whispered, the words resonating with an almost lewd quality in that musty establishment. I let out a strained, mirthless chuckle, a faint hollow sound that echoed in the silent bar. Sounds too good to be true, I remarked, striving to keep my tone light. She adamantly affirmed its veracity, asserting that plenty of girls like you worked for them. Her smile remained unsettlingly fixed, a superficial plasticine facade that failed to animate her eyes. She then reiterated the details of the work, continuously reiterating the same descriptors. Enjoyable, secure, exclusive. And then, with an almost unnerving nonchalance, she suggested, "Perhaps you should step outside for a moment. There's someone out there who can provide a more comprehensive explanation." someone who can provide a more comprehensive explanation. Does that particular phrase send a chill down your spine? What, or more precisely, who do you envision might have been waiting outside? Share your most unsettling conjectures. My heart rate accelerated. Her proposition, so nonchalantly offered, caused a knot of apprehension to tighten in my stomach. Exit the premises, in their company, to encounter an unknown individual in the obscurity of night. The charade was unequivocally over. I no longer deigned to feign amicability, abandoning the pretense of a congenial bartender. "I am perfectly content right where I am," I asserted, my voice unwavering, any trace of a smile utterly erased from my countenance. At that precise juncture, as if by some serendipitous intervention of fate, the front door swung open, admitting a boisterous group of patrons whose laughter and chatter shattered the almost hypnotic tension that had coalesced around the bar. The woman's demeanor shifted instantaneously. Her affable facade faltered for a fleeting moment, exposing a cold, steely resolve beneath, before she pivoted to address the man accompanying her. Without uttering another word or offering a parting gesture, they rose and exited, their beverages remaining almost entirely undisturbed. It would be disingenuous to claim I remained unshaken. Those seemingly innocuous individuals had just extended an offer of God only knows what nature. I recounted the unsettling encounter to my colleagues and my manager, and we collectively resolved to remain vigilant should they reappear. My manager reassured me that he was invariably within a 15-minute drive should I require his presence, and that the bar's surveillance cameras typically sufficed to dissuade any untoward conduct. There was little more I could do. Technically, they had committed no illegal acts. I tried to put it out of my mind, to relegate the memory to its deepest recesses. Yet a few nights later, after closing up the bar, I spotted the car. It was parked across the street, engine off, just sitting there, a dark silhouette under the dim glow of a street lamp. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, merely a coincidence. But the sensation of being observed crept across my skin like static electricity. Have you ever experienced that unmistakable sensation of being observed? Share your story in the comments if you dare. As I proceeded towards my vehicle in the almost deserted parking lot, I kept my gaze averted, my keys gripped so tightly in my hand that my knuckles blanched. The reverberation of my own footsteps seemed unduly amplified in the nocturnal stillness. Each shadow appeared to shift. Every gust of wind sounded like a clandestine whisper. The scent of damp asphalt and decaying foliage permeated the air, an aroma that suddenly struck me as ominous. As I ignited the engine and exited the parking facility, I checked my rearview mirrors. The car illuminated its headlights and proceeded to trail me. It maintained its distance, precisely calculated to avoid arousing suspicion, yet with every turn I executed, it remained a persistent point of light in the encroaching gloom. I veered erratically onto a side street, my heart hammering against my ribs. It followed. Another sharp turn onto an even more desolate thoroughfare. It remained. Panic began to well up within me, a hot tide surging through my chest. I knew, unequivocally, that it was them. No doubt remained. I compelled myself to maintain composure, to think with lucidity. My mind raced, desperately seeking an egress, a resolution. Then, without further equivocation, I navigated the thoroughfares I knew intimately and abruptly swerved into the parking lot of a local police precinct. I clutched the steering wheel with such force that I felt the leather's texture imprint itself into my palms. The instant my vehicle's tires made contact with the asphalt of the police station's lot, the car behind me accelerated, its tires screeching, and vanished into the night. For a time, nothing further transpired. An unsettling quietude descended, yet I knew with a bone-chilling certainty that it was far from over, and I was right. It occurred during a languid weekday shift, the bar nearly deserted. Nearing midnight, I was wiping down the counter, half contemplating an early close. When the door creaked open, it was her, the woman, alone. What would you do if you were in Melina's shoes right now? Would you confront the woman or attempt to flee? Share your survival strategy in the comments. My blood ran cold. The moment I saw her, my fingers almost imperceptibly sought my phone in my pocket. As discreetly as I could, I sent a text message to my boss. A single word: help. I looked up again. The woman was staring at me with that same artificial, unsettling smile. She walked slowly to the counter and sat down, hands clasped on the wood, like a patient customer. I was debating whether to simply dismiss her, to shout for her to leave, when her voice cut through my thoughts. "I thought I'd come see how you are," she said, with a falsely solicitous tone. My stomach churned, but I did my best to conceal my fear. I told her we were about to close and that she had to leave, but she put on a disappointed face, an infantile pout that seemed grotesque on her features. "Just an old-fashioned," she requested. I considered refusing, denying service, but a part of me calculated that preparing the drink would delay her long enough for my boss to arrive. It would be a distraction, a way to buy time. So, I turned and began to prepare the drink, striving to keep my hands steady, attempting to control the breath that threatened to catch in my throat. The clinking of ice against glass sounded like a gunshot in the bar's silence. And then I heard it. The soft, unmistakable click of the front door's lock being engaged from within. I spun around abruptly. The woman was gone. She was no longer at the counter. She was nowhere. A pit of dread opened in my stomach as I took a step toward the entrance. Through the door's glass, I saw it. A black van parked outside, engine running, waiting in silence. The front door is locked. The woman is gone. A van waits outside. What do you think happens next? Describe your greatest fear in a situation like this. Without thinking, my hand flew to the lock, and I twisted the bolt, securing the front door with a metallic click that echoed through the empty bar. My heart pounded uncontrollably, a frantic drum in my chest, but the relief lasted only a second. A clanging, rattling sound emanated from the back door. Someone was attempting to force their way in. The sound was violent, frantic, desperate. They were forcing the lock, pounding on the wood. Panic seized me. I knew the police wouldn't arrive in time. My mind screamed at me to run, to burst through the front door and flee into the night. But the image of that black van, waiting like a predator, paralyzed me. For some reason, instead of fleeing, my fight instinct took over. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a solid metal cocktail shaker, and held it like a weapon. Its cold, weighty metal offering scant comfort in my trembling hand. With my other hand, I dialed 911, the sound of my own voice, breathless and terrified, sounding alien to my ears. I was bracing myself for a fight for the worst when I saw headlights sweep into the parking lot. It was my boss. At that very instant, the sounds at the back door abruptly ceased. Seconds later, I heard the screech of tires on the asphalt. The black van tore away at high speed and vanished into the darkness. I embraced my boss when he entered, words spilling from me in an incoherent torrent. He said he managed to get the van's license plate number as it fled. When the officers arrived, my boss reviewed the security camera footage with them, and what we saw was worse than I could have imagined. My boss had arrived in the nick of time, but the danger was far greater than initially believed. Do you believe in coincidences, or do you think something more sinister was at play? Comment if you've ever escaped a dangerous situation by sheer luck. The grainy security camera footage told a far more sinister story. Just before the woman stepped away from the counter, the cameras captured two masked figures crouched near the front door, outside, waiting. They were poised to ambush me the moment I exited. There was another person at the back, the one pounding on the door, clearly attempting to frighten me, to corner me, to force me into the trap awaiting me at the main entrance. It was a plan, an orchestrated hunt. Witnessing that, the cold digital proof of their intent, was utterly terrifying. To compound matters, the license plate number my boss had noted turned out to belong to an unregistered vehicle, a ghost car, It's been quite some time since the incident, and no progress has been made in the investigation. The sole silver lining to emerge from all this is that my supervisor has never since allowed me to work solo on night shifts. Despite this, a profound disquiet persists. Whenever I'm rostered for a night shift, the anxiety resurfaces, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. I still ponder how they knew I would be working alone. How did they know my name? The woman shrieked it as I fled. I hadn't given her my name. It defies logic. I wasn't chosen at random. I was a direct target. And to this day, I often reflect on what might have transpired had I succumbed to fear, had I run out the front door as they desired. The image of those masked figures lurking in the darkness never truly leaves me.
Story 3. The Secret of the Dark House.
My name is Ronaldo, and at 40 years old, the echo of certain events still chills me to the bone. It's not a memory I revisit for pleasure, but a burden I need to share, perhaps so that someone else understands how some places can cling to your soul. It all began after a streak of bad luck turned our lives upside down. My wife, Leticia, and I were living in rented accommodation, counting pennies. I worked as a private driver. She took on cleaning jobs. Our dream was simple: a plot of land, a house of our own. And with the help of a relative, we managed to acquire a remote lot, where we painstakingly built every wall of our modest little house. The peace, however, was fleeting. The company where I worked went bankrupt, and the severance pay barely covered the debts that accumulated like weeds. It was in this scene of desperation that my mother-in-law, Donna Yolanda, came up with her proposal. A widow, alone in a large house in the countryside, she offered us a room, arguing that she needed company. Leticia saw it as our salvation. I, on the other hand, felt a knot in my stomach. My relationship with Yolanda had always been strange. There was a forced cordiality, a look that seemed to see right through you. But with no alternatives, we swallowed my pride and went. The first sight of the house was already an omen. The dark wooden gate, heavy, had carvings that weren't decorative. They seemed like symbols, worn down by time. It creaked like a lament as it opened. Inside, the house was impeccable, almost artificially preserved, with heavy furniture and a collection of sacred images that seemed to watch us from every wall. Donna Yolanda greeted us with a smile that didn't reach her eyes that measured me from head to toe, as if looking for fissures in my armor. Our room in the back was large, but the air was stale. A persistent smell of mold and damp earth permeated everything. That first night, my body aching from the move, I heard it. Above the ceiling, a light, shuffling sound. Slow, hesitant footsteps. I tried to convince myself it was the wind, an animal in the attic. In the morning, I mentioned it to Leticia. Ever practical, she just shrugged. It must be a cat, Ronaldo. Relax. But I couldn't relax. That sound wasn't an animal. It was heavy. It was intentional. It was the sound of someone who didn't want to be heard. Was that sound on the roof just the wind, as Leticia said, or the first warning of something sinister? Comment what you think was up there. Perfect. The door to the next dark corridor opens. Let's continue Ronaldo's journey. The following days dragged on in an uncomfortable normalcy. While I looked for odd jobs and did small repairs around the house, I felt Donna Yolanda's eyes on the back of my neck, a constant and silent presence. She insisted on preparing our meals, always with a kind smile, saying that we needed strength. Leticia seemed to blossom under her mother's care. I could hear them laughing in the kitchen, a sound that seemed distant to me as if it came from another world. That's when she started serving me tea. It had a dark color, almost black, and a smell of earth and roots. "Drink, my son," she would say. "It takes all the bad energy out of your body." The taste was bitter, earthy, and left a strange numbness on my tongue, a sensation that lingered for hours. I tried to refuse, but Leticia insisted that I was being ungrateful. In order to avoid conflict, I drank it, feeling a part of me fade away with each sip. One day, while looking for a toolbox in the back pantry, my hand bumped into a loose board in the wall. Curiosity, that treacherous advisor, made me pull it. The wood gave way, revealing a dark void. It was a small room, tiny and without windows, a cubicle forgotten by time. The air that came out of there was heavy, stale, with a sweet and rancid odor. My eyes adjusted to the dim light and I saw dusty shelves filled with jars of dark liquids, small cloth dolls with pins stuck in them, bundles tied with red ribbons, and in the center of it all, hanging from a string, a tuft of dark hair, unmistakably human. A chill ran down my spine, not a common shiver, but a wave of ice that went up my legs and settled in my chest. I recoiled instinctively, pushing the board back into place. The sound of it snapping back seemed too loud in that silence. My heart hammered against my ribs. I didn't tell Leticia. How could I explain that? She'd say they were just old customs, the kindly acts of a country lady. But what I saw there wasn't kindness. It was something deliberate, hidden, and I sensed profoundly malevolent. Would you have the courage to investigate what was in those jars and packages, or would you shut the door and keep the secret? Like Ronaldo did? Challenge yourself in the comments. Understood. The darkness deepens. Ronaldo's sanity begins to crumble. After that discovery, the house ceased to be merely an uncomfortable place. It became enemy territory. Every shadow seemed longer. Every creak of the wood sounded like a warning. I began to observe Donna Yolanda with an almost feverish attention. Her routine was, in fact, peculiar. Almost every morning, even before the sun rose, she would quietly slip out the back door. She'd return an hour later, her shoes caked with dirt and the hem of her dress damp, her nails invariably grimy. "I went to tend my seedlings," she'd say with that serene smile. But I would scour the backyard and see no seedlings whatsoever. The garden was the same, with its old, gnarled plants, no freshly turned earth, no tools in sight. The smell of soil she brought with her was different, deeper, like that of a place that receives no sunlight. The confirmation that my paranoia was justified came on a grey afternoon. As I went out to fetch firewood, I found it. Near the back fence, lying on the sparse grass, was a chicken, dead. There were no signs of attack by another animal. There was a single, precise cut on its throat, almost surgical, and the strangest thing, there was almost no blood. As I stared, shocked, trying to decide what to do, I noticed something else. Around the trunk of an old mango tree nearby, someone had drawn symbols on the ground with a white powder as fine as flour. They weren't scribbles. They were geometric shapes, interconnected, very similar to the carvings on the entrance gate. My stomach churned. I called Leticia, my voice more shaky than I would have liked. I showed her the animal, the drawings. She looked, wrinkled her nose at the dead chicken, and then at the symbols. "Oh, Ronaldo," she said, with a tranquility that frightened me. "It must be something the neighborhood kids did. Or maybe Mom performed some protection ritual. She has these little quirks." She spoke as if commenting on the weather, as if a sacrificed animal and strange symbols were the most normal thing in the world. In that moment, looking at my wife's serene face, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I was completely alone in this. Those drawings made with white powder, were they just childish scribbles or a sign of something far more sinister? Share your theories about what they could mean. Confirmed. The web tightens around Ronaldo, and his dreams become the new stage for terror. The nights became my own private purgatory. Sleep, which should have been a refuge, transformed into a labyrinth of anguish. I started having the same dream, over and over. It wasn't a nightmare with monsters or chases, but something much more subtle and disturbing. I saw myself trapped in a cramped space with dark, damp walls, much like the small room I found behind the pantry. The air was thin, heavy, and I struggled to breathe, feeling my lungs burn with each attempt. I saw no doors or windows, just the claustrophobic sensation of being slowly crushed. I always woke up the same way, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, and a tightness in my chest so real that it left me breathless for minutes. Leticia, next to me, slept the sleep of the just, oblivious to my torment. One morning after a particularly suffocating night, the need to find a hammer led me back to the pantry. I didn't want to, but it was as if a force was pulling me there. And as I feared, the board hiding the cubicle was ajar, a dark slit beckoning me. Against all my better judgment, I peeked. The faint light from the hallway revealed more details. The shelves were filled with melted candles of strange colors, like black and dark red. There were small clay pots with pieces of yellowed paper inside, with handwriting I couldn't decipher. The sweet and rancid smell was stronger, and this time I noticed a new aroma underneath. A floral perfume, a scent of jasmine, the same perfume Leticia wore. I slammed the door shut and fled from there, my heart in my throat. The fear of seeming crazy prevented me from telling Leticia. How could I explain that I smelled her perfume in a place like that? She would have me committed. The feeling of estrangement became an invisible cloak that I wore all day. Donna Yolanda, with her perpetual smile, seemed to know. Her eyes followed me, and I sensed in them not just assessment, but a kind of dark satisfaction, as if she knew exactly what was going on in my head, in my dreams. She knew I had seen her sanctuary, Leticia's perfume in the secret little room. What could that mean? Was it a coincidence, or a sign that she was more involved than Ronaldo imagined? Leave your opinion. Understood. The pressure mounts, and the events in the house begin to leave physical marks. The sound returned. That night, the shuffling in the ceiling above our room was more distinct, heavier. They were no longer hesitant steps. It sounded like someone was dragging a heavy object with effort from one side to the other. The sound was slow, rhythmic, and with each drag, the wooden ceiling creaked as if it were about to give way. Enough. I couldn't lie there any longer pretending I didn't hear. I got up silently, grabbed my cell phone flashlight, and went to the hallway. I looked for any sign of a trapdoor, an entrance to the attic, but the ceiling boards were continuous, sealed. There was no visible access. I stood there, in the middle of the dark house, with only the trembling beam of the flashlight cutting through the darkness, pointed at the ceiling. The sound stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was even more terrifying. It was a heavy, expectant silence, as if whatever was up there knew I was down here listening. I felt a chill down my neck, the unmistakable sensation of being watched from the darkness. I went back to bed, defeated, and curled up next to Leticia, who didn't even stir. I woke up with a sharp, throbbing pain in my back, as if I'd been kicked or fallen awkwardly. Taking off my shirt in front of the bathroom mirror, I saw the marks. Purplish, almost black bruises scattered across my lower back, like the marks of large, strong fingers that had grabbed me during the night. I showed them to Leticia, hoping perhaps for a glimmer of concern. She looked, touched the marks lightly and said, "Wow, that must have been a nasty bump. You must have hit the edge of the bed without realizing it." The simplicity of her explanation was maddening. How could I have hurt myself like that while sleeping? The last straw came during lunch. In the middle of the meal, Donna Yolanda stared at me intently over the edge of her plate and asked, with a venomous sweetness, "Did you sleep well, Ronaldo? I heard you walking around the house in the early hours. Something keeping you up at night?" The blood ran cold in my veins. The question wasn't one of concern. It was a statement. She knew. She knew I had gotten up. She knew I was listening. Her smile widened minutely, an almost imperceptible gesture, but to me it was a declaration of war. The marks on Ronaldo's back and Donna Yolanda's question, "Do you think it was a supernatural attack, or is there a logical explanation he isn't seeing? Comment if something like this has ever given you the chills." Confirmed. The web tightens further, and now Leticia is at its center. The following weeks were a blur of anxiety and powerlessness. I couldn't find steady work, just odd jobs that barely paid for our food. I felt more and more like an intruder, a dead weight in that house that was making me sick. While I was sinking, Letitia seemed to merge with the environment. She and her mother became inseparable, sharing secrets in whispers in the kitchen, tending to the mysterious garden, spending entire afternoons locked in Iolanda's room. I became a shadow, a spectator to the slow disappearance of the woman I married. Paranoia consumed me. I saw signs in everything. One day, while looking for a rag in the low kitchen cabinet, my fingers touched something soft and strange, hidden in the back. I pulled it out. It was a small sack of rough fabric, tied with a faded red ribbon. My heart raced. With trembling hands, I untied the knot. Inside, there was a mixture that made my stomach churn: clipped nails, tufts of hair, some light, like Letitia's, others dark, like mine, and a stained piece of fabric with words that seemed written with charcoal. I couldn't read it. I closed the bag with desperate speed, shoved it back into the bottom of the cabinet, and backed away, panting. It was a spell. I had no more doubts. I tried once again to talk to Letitia. I sat next to her on the bed, took her hand, and in the calmest voice I could muster, told her about the bag in the cabinet. She listened to me, her face expressionless. When I finished, she looked at me with a concern that wasn't for me, but for my sanity. "Ronaldo, you're exaggerating. Mom is just an old-fashioned lady. It must be some kind of charm to protect the house, to protect us." She pulled away, saying that I was seeing things, influenced by stress. That night, my recurring nightmare changed. I was still in the dark, cramped room, but now I was no longer alone. In the darkest corner, there was a feminine silhouette. She was standing, motionless. I couldn't see her face, as it was covered by a dark, thick veil, but I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that it was Letitia. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, present in my asphyxiation, part of that nightmare. I woke up screaming, her name on my lips. She turned, drowsy, and asked what had happened. I couldn't answer. How could I tell her that I saw her in my personal hell? Was the silhouette in the dream really Letitia, or a projection of Ronaldo's fear? What do you think will happen next, now that he is increasingly isolated? Understood. Ronaldo seeks external help, but the house's influence may already be too strong. I was at my limit. The house, the dreams, Letitia's behavior, everything was pushing me to the brink of madness. Desperate, I decided to go for a walk, just to breathe air that wasn't from that house. I ended up at a small fair in Villa São Damião and, on impulse, I stopped in front of a stall of a wrinkled-faced old man who sold herbs and roots. Something told me to speak. I told him vaguely that the house where I was staying had a heavy energy, that I wasn't sleeping well. The old man listened in silence, his small, shrewd eyes fixed on mine. Without saying a word, he turned, picked up a small sprig of dark leaves and handed it to me. "Take this, my son," he said, his voice as hoarse as dry leaves. "It helps protect against the evil eye. Put it in a glass with water and leave it near the door of your room." I thanked him and returned home, clutching that sprig as if it were my only salvation. I waited for Letitia and her mother to be distracted and did as he instructed, placing the glass with the sprig on the floor next to our door. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not a deep, restorative sleep, but a dreamless sleep without the sensation of suffocation. I woke up feeling a lightness that I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, fragile as it was, began to sprout. But it didn't last long. The next morning, as I passed through the living room, I noticed Donna Yolanda's gaze. She didn't look at me, but at the glass with the sprig. It was a quick, almost imperceptible glance, but loaded with a glacial contempt. 2 days later, I found the sprig on the floor of the hallway. It was dry, brittle, and trampled, as if someone had crushed it in anger. The glass of water was gone. That same day, the plot thickened. Letitia came to me, her face pale, but with a strange glint in her eyes. She'd been complaining of fatigue and nausea for days. We took a home pregnancy test. Positive. We were going to have our first child. A wave of joy should have washed over me, but what I felt was a chilling tightness in my chest. A child. In that house. From that day on, Leticia's transformation accelerated. She lived in a state of torpor, sleeping most of the day. Donna Yolanda became her shadow, caring for her with obsessive dedication, always with a new tea, a family recipe to strengthen the baby. Leticia started wearing her mother's old necklaces, heavy, with dark beads, which she never took off. One early morning, I woke up thirsty and found her in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table in the dark, just staring at the wall. I called her name, once, twice. It took her a while to react, as if she were returning from a very distant place. When she finally turned around, her eyes were empty. She smiled and said she didn't remember getting out of bed. The baby, I realized with growing terror, was not just ours. It also belonged to that house, and to the grandmother. The destroyed protection branch, the pregnancy. Do you believe the child is in danger? Comment on what you would do in Ronaldo's place to protect his family. Understood. The battle becomes more direct. Ronaldo tries to fight, but the forces in the house react. I could no longer be passive. Leticia's pregnancy was the trigger. I needed to fight, even without knowing what I was fighting against. I went back to the herb master's tent, who I now knew was named Benedito. I told him everything bluntly, the secret room, the dead chicken, the dreams, Leticia's behavior, the pregnancy. He listened to me with a somber seriousness. "The thing is ancient," he said finally. "You need to purify the environment, but carefully. She will feel it." He sold me a package of herbs that, according to him, produced a powerful cleansing smoke and a handful of coarse salt. Wait for a night when she's not there. Burn this in the kitchen, which is the heart of the house, and pray. Pray with faith. The opportunity arose a few days later when Donna Yolanda announced that she was going to a vigil at the church in Barra do Norte and would only be back late. It was my chance. I waited for Leticia to fall asleep, and around 2 in the morning, I went to the kitchen. The silence of the house was oppressive. I placed the charcoal in an old can, lit it, and threw the herbs on top. The smoke rose immediately, thick and with a strong, acrid smell. I began to recite the Lord's Prayer, the only prayer that came to mind, repeating the words like a mantra. An intense heat surged through my body, and I felt a sharp pain in the back of my neck. It was at that exact moment that I heard it. The sound of the key turning in the lock of the front door. I froze. She wasn't supposed to be back so soon. In a panic, I tried to extinguish the herbs, blowing on them, smothering them with a cloth, but the smoke seemed to have a life of its own, spreading even more. The door opened. Donna Yolanda entered. She stopped in the hallway, her face an indecipherable mask in the dim light. The smell of the smoke was undeniable. She looked at the kitchen, then at me, who was sweating, panting, with my face smeared with soot. "What are you doing awake, Ronaldo?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm. "I had insomnia," I stammered. She said nothing more. She just gave me a minimal smile, a glint of triumph in her eyes, and withdrew to her room. She knew. Not only did she know what I was doing, but she seemed to have foreseen it. My attempt at attack had failed miserably, and now I had exposed myself. Was Donna Yolanda's unexpected return a coincidence, or was she alerted by some force within the house? Comment on what you think she will do now that she knows Ronaldo is fighting against her. Understood. The search for help intensifies, and the evidence becomes undeniable. My act of rebellion cost me dearly. The atmosphere in the house became glacial. Donna Yolanda barely spoke to me, but her presence was an oppressive force. Leticia, in turn, seemed increasingly distant, as if a fog separated her from me. Desperate, I returned to Seu Benedito. I told him about the failed purification attempt. He shook his head, worried. "She is strong. Her connection with your wife is old, and now, with the child, it is deepening. I need something from them to understand the nature of this bond. He asked me for a personal item from Leticia and another from Donna Yolanda. The idea made my stomach churn, but I would do anything. I waited for the opportunity. One afternoon, while Leticia was taking a bath, I took her comb from the dresser, full of strands of blonde hair. Later, I saw a thin blouse that Donna Yolanda had left drying on the clothesline in the back. With my heart pounding, I grabbed the garment, quickly folded it and hid it in a bag. I took the items to Seu Benedito. He took them, went into the back of his stall, and stayed there for about 20 minutes, which felt like an eternity. When he came back, his face was pale. "My son," he said, his voice strained. "This isn't from now. She's weaving a chain, using your wife's life force to feed something. And the baby is the anchor." He handed me a small talisman made of complex knots in colored threads. "Hang this on the headboard of your bed without them seeing, and place a bowl of clean water under the bed every night. It will create a barrier." I returned home with the talisman in my pocket, feeling its weight like a small hope. I managed to hang it without Leticia noticing. The first 2 nights were quiet, but on the third I woke up to a dry noise, a crack, followed by the sound of water spreading. I looked under the bed. The bowl of water was overturned, the floor soaked. There was no way it could have fallen on its own. It was as if an invisible hand had kicked it violently. Shortly after, Leticia confirmed the pregnancy with a blood test. Her joy was overshadowed by extreme fatigue. I, on the other hand, felt a fear that gnawed at me from the inside. The house seemed to suffocate me, and my nose started to bleed for no reason. One night, I woke up and heard Leticia murmuring in the living room. I went there and saw her standing in front of the dark window singing a strange melody, a dissonant lullaby. "What is that, my love?" I asked. She turned around, her eyes glazed over. "It's a song that Mom taught me to calm the baby." That's when I knew I needed more help. So Benedito referred me to a folk healer, Donna Sebastiana, a woman who, he said, sees beyond the veil. I went to her, told her everything. She listened to me, her fingers running over the beads of a rosary. When I finished, she said in a firm voice, "I need to go there. I need to look into that woman's eyes." The overturned bowl of water, the song. Yolanda's influence is becoming stronger and more direct. Do you think the folk healer, Donna Sebastiana, will be able to break this chain? Leave your prediction. Perfect. We have reached the climax. The final confrontation and the consequences that will echo forever. The door opens to the last act. I took Donna Sebastiana to the house one afternoon, under the pretext of her being an old acquaintance who had come to visit us. Mrs. Yolanda greeted us at the door, her polished smile unwavering, but her dark, penetrating eyes lingered on Sebastiana for a beat too long. The silent battle began there, on the threshold. Sebastiana, a small, seemingly frail woman, possessed a calmness that felt like a rampart. She declined the invitation to sit in the living room. "What a lovely backyard," she said, her voice gentle. "Would you mind if I took a look?" Without waiting for a response, she walked towards the back, and I followed, feeling Yolanda's gaze burning into my back. Outside, Sebastiana didn't look at the plants. Her eyes swept across the ground, the fence, the trunk of the old mango tree. She stopped near a makeshift cellar, the existence of which I had barely noticed. The wooden door was secured with a thick chain. "What's in here?" she asked. "Just old junk." Yolanda's voice sounded behind us, making us jump. She had followed us. Sebastiana turned and smiled at my mother-in-law. "I understand that you like to maintain family traditions, don't you?" Yolanda's smile was pure ice. "Everyone has their customs. We shouldn't judge what we don't understand." At that moment, Leticia appeared pale, asking if everything was all right. Sebastiana approached her, touched her shoulder. and with a tenderness that sent shivers down my spine, asked how she was feeling. Leticia only mumbled about dizziness. Later, when Yolanda was in the kitchen, Sebastiana pulled me aside. Her voice was an urgent whisper. "You need to get your wife out of here. Now, before that child is born. The house is alive, and your mother-in-law is feeding it. If your son is born under this roof, the bond she is creating will become unbreakable. He will belong to her." The words hit me like a punch. I told Leticia. The reaction was worse than I imagined. She accused me of ingratitude, of being crazy, of wanting to offend the only person who had helped us. We fought like never before, and she locked herself in the room, crying. I was defeated. No money, no support, no way out. And then, the miracle. An acquaintance called, asking about our old plot of land. There was a buyer interested, paying cash. I didn't hesitate. I sold the lot, gathered every penny I had, and announced to Leticia, "We're leaving." To my surprise, beneath the anger, I saw a flicker of relief in her eyes. On the morning of our departure, Mrs. Yolanda's room remained closed. No goodbye, no word. Just the heavy, judgmental silence. As the car pulled away from that house, I felt a physical weight lift from my shoulders. We went to an aunt's house. Hugo was born, strong and healthy. Leticia became her old self again, and for a while, peace reigned. But the legacy of that house is long-lived. When Hugo turned 3, he began to talk. He said that at night, a lady in a dark dress appeared in the corner of his room. She didn't speak. She just beckoned him with her finger, calling him back to an ancient place. Leticia says it's just his imagination. I know it's not. I don't know what Donna Yolanda did, nor what she wanted. She passed away months later, alone in that house. But I know that a part of her, a shadow, a presence, clung to my son. I have no answers, only the feeling that certain doors, once opened, never fully close again. And so, Ronaldo's story leaves us with a lingering chill. A terror that doesn't come from monsters or ghosts, but from the darkness that can lurk behind a familiar smile, a caring gesture. A silent inheritance passed down not by will, but through blood and soul. What was Donna Yolanda? A witch? A guardian of ancient secrets? Or just a lonely grandmother whose love became something possessive and dark? The truth, perhaps, was buried with her in that house. But her echo still calls out to little Hugo in the darkness of the night. Thank you for traversing yet another portal with us. If this story chilled your soul, leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our journeys into the unknown. And don't forget to comment, "I am not afraid." Remember, sometimes the greatest danger lies not in what scares us, but in what we accept without question. Sleep well, if you can.